सांगा.
अरे किती छान आहे म्हणून पुण्या हे असं ते जर काहीतरी जमतात हे आले संगीतात आहे
काय म्हणतो?
इरकड वापराय काढल्यास का
साऊंड झालाय.
फॅन लाव.
So, good evening, all of you. In last lecture, we discussed about theoretical base of international economics, and today we try to discuss about the balance of payments. So these terms is related to the international trade. Okay, and basically the balance of payment is quite important part of the international economies and international trade, where the country have exchanging the commodity to each others in terms of the export and import. So basically, so in today's lecture, we try to understand the balance of payment, meaning of purpose and the measurement of the balance of payment. So basically, products sectors transactions refer the foreign trade, export and import goods and services. So those countries have some surplus of the production, they can export this production to other country. Similarly, if they have some deficit in particular production or some scarcity of particular production, they need some extra production good for production. So they can get such a commodities from the other country in terms of the import. So in international transaction, generate monetary flow between the two nations through the import and export. Similarly, there are some international monetary flow generated by the two kinds of the transactions. So their transaction will be foreign trade that will be include the import and export of the commodities, not only commodities but services also we have to take into account. And afterwards we have the second, that is a direct international flow of the capital. So there international flow of the capital is also a part of the balance of payment, where the capital, the other investors, so outsider investor, if they want to invest some amount in a particular nation, they can invest the amount through they send their capital in particular nation and they invest in such a capital. So capital inflow and capital outflow also part of the international transactions, and it will be considered in a balance of payment. This conduct provides the overall the economic effect, may be positive or maybe negative. So both transactions have the economic effect. Sometimes this effect are the positive. Some country are enjoying the positive effect, or some have some negative or some disadvantage also. This can be create the condition where the overall balance of payment, balance of financial flow in a surplus, in a balance of the surplus, in balance or the deficit. So basically overall the financial flow in terms of the foreign trade or in terms of the foreign capital, it may be surplus, it may be deficit, or it may be the balance. So it may be surplus, it means in such a transaction, in international transaction, country have some surplus in a foreign exchange, so they can get some, maybe they have the more export than compared to the import, and maybe they have the more capital inflow than capital outflow, so they can get the surplus in the transaction of international trade. And the balance in international trade means their export and import as well as their outflow and inflow of the capital are equal. That time they have some balance in a capital inflow and outflow. So basically, and similarly we have the deficit. So deficit will be like sometimes the import is greater than export, or the capital outflow is greater than the capital inflow. In such a situation, country can facing the deficit problem in a international trade transaction or international transaction basically. So now we have to discuss about the meaning of balance of payment. So when we want to define the balance of payment, so that can be defined like this. The balance of payment is a systematic accounting of all economic transaction between the rest of the country and the residents of the rest of the world over the period of the time. Usually, we are taking a period that is a 1 year. So here, we are into account in a balance of payment all the transaction which is done by the domestic people or domestic society to rest of the world. This transaction may be in terms of the commodities, in terms of the goods or services, or in terms of the capital inflow and outflow also. So in India, basically accounting system generally adopted the double entry accounting system, that is a bookkeeping system, and where that's why the balance of payment both sides we have the endly we get the balance. Next, the purpose of the balance of payment. What are the purpose behind the balance of payment? Why it's a need to calculate the balance of payment? So basically, the international economic transaction of a country have a serious impact on the level of the its consumption and the stock of a capital. So basically, it have a general impact or serious impact on the level of the consumption and similarly stock of the capital, because the stock of the capital can be affected through the foreign capital. Similarly, the consumption also may be affected through the import or export policy of a country. So that's why international economic the balance of payment is quite important. Next, we have the economic crisis can be prevented by the taking stock of the overall the international transaction as related by the BOP position and appropriate time. So there are some economic crises. We have some economic crisis previously also. So such a crisis can be prevented by the taking this particular stock of the international transaction or taking the reserve, and through that they can control such a crisis. Next, we have the BOP or balance of payment provide the useful data for analyzing the country's weaknesses, strength, and respect to the foreign trade and its gain and the loss from the international transaction. So basically, balance of payment provide useful data for analyzing the country's weaknesses as well as the strength in the respect to their foreign trade. Or similarly, if a particular country getting the gain or the loss in a foreign trade, that will be analyzed through the data which we are getting from the balance of payment. So, in the balance of payment, can be explained is the country getting the gain in a or they get some loss in a transaction of the international trade, or what are the weaknesses, what are the strength of the particular country. We can get understanding according to the balance of payment. So next we have the we discuss about the balance of balance of payment account. So basically, current transaction and capital transaction. So current transaction and capital transaction, there are two accounts are there in a balance of payment. Actually, we have the current transaction, or the current account is known as a current account, and another is a capital transaction is known as a capital account. So basically, in a current transaction, it includes those transactions that affect the current level of the income and the consumption for the period of the balance of payment is prepared. So basically, it's include all the transactions that affect the current level of the income and the consumption. It's include export, import of goods and services, and similarly unrelated or unrequired receipt and the payment also a part of the current transaction. This have been settled by the end of the accounting years, or that will be settled end of the accounting year. These are the call of flow of the transaction. So basically, in a current transaction, it have the impact over it have the impact over the consumption as well as the current level of the income, and it include the import and export of goods and commodity as well as the services. So in other side, we have the capital transaction. It's include a transaction that result inflow and outflow of a capital. So this change the stock of the capital of a country. That inflow and outflow will be have the impact on the stock of capital stock of a country. If we have the quite higher inflow of a capital in our country, automatically the stock of the capital will be rise. And if we have the opposite situation where the outflow is quite greater than the inflow of the capital, it have the adverse impact on the stock of the capital stock of a country. So it's include foreign investment, inflow and outflow, in terms of the FDI, that is foreign direct investment, or in terms of the portfolio investment also. Next, we have the foreign borrowing and the lending. So foreign borrowing and lending, sometimes the country can get a loan or get a financial assistance from the outsiders. It may be countries of some rich country or some international organization. They are getting the loan from such a countries or the organization, and such a borrowing is known as a foreign borrowing or foreign lending. Banking transaction, if there are some banking transactions, so because now the banking business also are increasing quite faster, and in our domestic bank also have some branches in outside, or some foreign bank have the branches in our domestic economy. So that receipt and the payment also a part of the capital account. Next, with the settlement of the capital transaction is spread over the long period of the time. Okay, so spread because the capital, we have the some capital is short term capital or some other long term capital. So here we can't have the settlement in the last of and end of the academic accounting year. So these are the called a stock of called a stock transaction. So such a transaction is known as a stock transaction. So when we continue this same current account and capital account, so here we have that in current account the transaction include merchandise trade like export and import, that is visible as well as invisible export and import. And similarly it will be include that in related receipt or in required receipts are there. The net balance of the merchant sides trade is called a balance of the trade. So net balance of the current account is called the balance of the trade. So if we have the export greater than the import, or if a particular country have the export is greater than import, that time we can say the surplus trade balance. In other situation, if export is smaller than import, in such situation the country have the deficit in a trade balance. And similarly, sometime if the country have the export and import is equal, that time we can say the current account is the balance. So the trade balance the trade balance need receipt and payment on the account of the invisible and unaltered transfer given in overall the balance of the current account. So all current account balance. So the current account balance, it include visibles as well as invisible trade. Okay, and there is in current account also is known as a balance of trade. And if you have the export greater than the import, that is surplus trade. And if you have the opposite situation where the export is smaller than the import, that will be some deficit trade will be there. So similarly, we have the other side, that is the capital account, where capital inflow and outflow we have to consider. So transaction include short-term capital movement. So basically capital can be classified in short-term and long-term capital. So short-term capital movement, it means short-term capital inflow and outflow. Similarly, long-term capital movements, it also include a long-term capital inflow and outflow in a country. Change in the stock of the gold and a foreign exchange reserve. So change in the stock of gold and foreign exchange reserve, it may be stock can increase. If we have the some surplus, automatically the stock will be increased in a gold as well as a foreign currency of foreign exchange reserve. So in India, capital account transactions are categorized as the foreign investment. So we have the first item, that is foreign investment, net loan, so external assistance of a commercial borrowings, and others we have that other types of the short-term capital transaction, private capital transaction also we have to include in a capital account in India. So basically the important is the export of the capital is treated as a debit in terms of in a capital account, and the import of the capital is a credit in terms of the balance of payment. So if we have the inflow, import means inflow of the capital is treated as a credit, and export capital means outflow of the capital of a country is treated as export of a capital. So that is the current and the capital account. Next, we have the balance payment always in a balance. So under the double entry accounting system, the balance payment is always in a balance because we are adopting the double entry system, and in a double entry system, lastly we have the balance payment is always balance. Reality, however, an imbalance in the balance of the payment does arise due to why the imbalance of a balance of payment will be arise. Imbalance, it means that there will be surplus, or it may be there will be some deficit, and in such a account, in such a case, we can say there will be imbalance in a trade. Once the current account on the current account, if the export of a country are really equal to its import, there is usually a surplus or deficit. So in reality, we can't say in the current account a country's export is always equal to country's import. Sometimes the export is greater than import, or sometimes that will be quite a smaller than import. So that time the country has usually they have the surplus or deficit current account. Similarly, on the capital account also, the foreign investment of a country is not equal to the investment to abroad. So foreign investment in a country or within a country is not equal to the foreign investment doing by the abroad for the particular society, particular country. So in a short run, capital inflow and outflow are not always equal. In the long run, it may be equal, but in a short run, we can't say the capital inflow and outflow is equal. So the methods, basically the methods of the assigning a BOP, the important balances are: first we have balance trade, next we have the current account balance, and third one we have the balance of a payment. So basically balance trade, current account balance, and balance of payment. So current account balance, how we can get a current account balance? So basically current account balance, export minus import is equal to merchandise trade. So export minus import is equal to merchandise trade. So that time we can have the balance of a trade. Current account balance is equal to balance of the trade plus net transfer, payment, and receipt done by the particular country, and that time that will be current account balance will be that. So here we have another account, that is a capital account. So how we get the balance in the capital account? So in a net long-term capital flow equal to net foreign investment equal to capital inflow minus capital outflow. So basically net long-term capital flow is equal to net foreign investment or equal capital inflow minus capital outflow. Net short-term private capital flow, also we have to capital inflow minus the capital outflow. And similarly, the capital account, total capital account balance is equal to net foreign investment plus net short-term investment, short-term capital flow. So A and B we have to make a plus, and we are getting the capital account balance. So balance of payment, it means balance of the payment is equal to capital account plus current account balance. So balance of payment, it means the balance in a capital account as well as the balance in a current account. So that is known as a balance of payment. So here we see one example of a balance of account. Basically, so in accounting system, we have the one balance of India's current account balance in 2010-11. That is one example, and this is a current account balance. That's why we have the only export and import, and that will be figure is given there. So India exporting some amount of the commodity and importing some amount of the commodities. But when we see this number of the figure, the India's import is quite greater than the export, and that's why in finally we have the current account balance where we have to minus minus export from the import, and we getting the answer that is 21 2,19,700 crore rupees is the India's deficit in a current account because the India's export is smaller than the import, or I mean other way we can say India's import is quite greater than the export. So that is the India's current account, current account of a balance of payment. Similarly, we have the India's capital account. So where India's capital account, overall we have the 19 capital account. So same year's capital account we are trying to find out, and we try to get it all inflow. So inflow of a credit, it means that is the inflow of the capital. It means that capital will be adding the amount in our country. So basically inflow, it means import of the capitals, and outflow, it means the export from the of capital. So here we are taking, when we see this India's capital account for all the balance in 2019, and we are getting that is the one first capital account. So in there our outflow is smaller than capital inflow, and that's why in capital account India getting 2,44,861 surplus in a capital account. So afterwards, when we try to overall balance of the payment, where we have to consider both of the account, that is capital account as well as the current account. And here we have the capital account balance, that is quite plus because we have the surplus in the capital account, and that's why it will be 2,44,861 crore. And similarly in capital account, the balance will be quite minus because our import is quite greater than export, and our balance is we have the deficit in that account, that is the 18,000 sorry 1,80,626. So in overall, in a balance of payment, when we combine all the capital account balance and the current account balance, so overall balance of payment in 2010, India getting the surplus. That surplus is 64,235 crore. India is getting the surplus because of the then capital account, because in basically when we see the India's current account, so India's current account have some deficit because India's export is quite greater than the import. But similarly, when we think about the capital account, so India's capital inflow of capital in India is quite greater than outflow of capital in India. That's why in a overall, in a balance of payment, India can get some surplus in a balance of payment. Now we have the second slides or second topic, that is the balance of payment equilibrium and disequilibrium. Up to here we discuss only the concept of the balance of payment and some content of the balance of payment, where the current and capital account. And now we have to discuss about the balance of payment equilibrium and the disequilibrium. So basically, the balance of payment equilibrium and disequilibrium in economics terminology, and a balance of or balance or imbalance is called an unequal or disequilibrium in a balance of payment. So in economic terms, in economic term, basically balance or imbalance is called equilibrium or the disequilibrium. If we have the balance, that time we can say that there will be equilibrium. If there is no balance, it means imbalance. It may be surplus or it may be deficit. That's also we can say the disequilibrium. So in the account to sense of the BOP, always the balance. So basically in reality, however, the equilibrium of the balance are the pro forma, and BOP most countries are usually is a disequilibrium. When you think about the BOP, the most of the countries, they are facing the BOP problems, and that problem is a disequilibrium in a BOP. So now we have to think about the balance, the BOP disequilibrium may be in the form of the BOP surplus or deficit. So there will be some disequilibrium, or there will be some imbalance in a BOP balance of payment because of the surplus. Surplus, it means maybe they have the more export goods and commodity, or more in capital inflow compared to the outflow. So they may such a situation they get some surplus. Similarly, in opposite situation, the country can face the deficit problem. So basically, the disequilibrium or imbalance will be created because of this in a balance of payment. There will be surplus or the deficit. For the purpose of the balance of payment assessment, all internal transactions are all the international transactions are grouped under the autonomous transactions and undue or the accommodating transactions. So we have the autonomous transaction or some accommodating transactions are there, or we are able to explain such a transaction. So now we have to think about the autonomous transaction. So autonomous transaction are a transaction that take place automatically due to the natural human needs. So there are some natural human needs, and to fulfill such a needs, this transaction have to take place, and a desire to consuming more and better goods and make the best possible use of the resource of the higher profit and the income. So basically, autonomous transactions are the transaction that take place automatically due to the natural human need or desire for consuming more commodity or goods to get more profit also. So for in our sense, we can say that to demanding the fuels from other country or importing the crude oil, that is our autonomous transaction, because that is a need, and we have to fulfill that need. We are not able to produce such a too much commodity or the fuels to complete our the domestic needs. So basically, these generally appear in the form of the export and import good and services. So that desires or that needs or fulfill desire or fulfill needs, that will be we can say they appear in a form of the export as well as the import. If a particular society has some surplus of the particular goods or commodity, so they try to exporting such a commodity. Similarly, some other, if they have some deficit or they have some scarcity of the particular production of the goods, they needed more commodities, so they can get this such a commodity from those countries have the surplus. So basically, these export and import necessarily by the following economic reason why this export and the import are needed. First, the scarcity of necessities in the domestic market. If there is a scarcity, or there scarcity will be created, or there will be demand is quite greater than the supply, or supply are not increasing. So it may be the scarcity in the terms of the foods or some cloths or some other commodity also. So basically, export and import necessity because of the scarcity necessity in the domestic market. Next, we have the demand for such inputs of oil, industrial raw materials also, because these inputs are quite important for the development, for the progress. Because oil and industrial raw material we are getting from outsiders. If you are not try to get this such a commodity from outsider, that will have the adverse impact on the development. Next, we have the need for the better and less costly machinery, equipment, and technology to increase the production capacity of the economy. So basically, to require the low cost, less costly machinery, equipment, or modern technology, or good quite improvement in the technology to increase the production of a capacity of economy. And next, we have the desire for the more and a better goods in the services. So because of the such things are there, the trade will be happen, export and import will be there. So autonomous transactions are essential in a current account transaction. So basically, autonomous transaction is quite important in a current account transaction, and that transaction is a take place because we discussed these four things. First, we have the necessities or scarcity in the market. Second, we have the demand of the raw materials and some oil Afterwards, we have the better quality and low costly machines and equipment and technology, and similarly, the desire for the more better goods and services. So autonomous transactions are basically a current account transaction. Okay, so next, when you move in next slide, basically, yeah. So we have to move in the next slide. The induce or the accommodating transaction. So accommodating transaction between a nation and the rest of the world are not always in a balance. So such a transaction we can't get the balance in a balanced transaction are there. Export and import are not always equal in a value in terms. So export and import when we value the export and as well as the import, so these are not equal. Then there is a need for the payment by the countries with a deficit. So basically, if the export and import are not equal, or if a country have the deficit, they getting the more export, they getting more import than export. So there will be the problem will be rise to payment of a countries other country deficit payment to other country. So the need for the payment generate the short-term capital movement because if you want to if a country have the deficit, for example, if India have a deficit in a balance of payment and he have to pay some more amount to the other country because they are getting we are getting quite less amount in terms of the export, but we are importing quite more amount of the import compared to the export, and that difference between import and export we have to there will be deficit, and fulfill such a deficit to pay the deficit we have to get some amount from the outsiders. It may be IMF, it may be some developed countries, or it may be some Asian Development Bank or other international organization. They can provide some short-term capital to such a country to fulfill their deficit fulfill their deficit balance of payment. So deficit country borrow and the surplus country lend in order to settle the payment. So basically, those are the deficit. They have the scarcity. They don't have the too much sufficient foreign reserve in their hand, so they have to take foreign currency from other side outsiders. And similarly, there are some countries those have the surplus. They have this quite more foreign currency in their hand, so they can they lend the capital to the deficit country, and they get to fulfill the deficit. Now, such a short-term borrowing and the lending in this by the foreign trade, export and import. So there will be such a short-term borrowing, short-term borrowing and the lending is include in a account accommodating the transaction. So basically, these transactions are called induced transaction or accommodating transaction, and also short-term capital movement in for the gold movement and accommodating the capital movement in account of the autonomous transaction are treated in include transaction. So basically, short-term movement for the fulfilling the deficit problem in a balance of payment that will be happen. Okay. So when you move, yeah, now we have to move on next slide. Yeah. So method to assigning the balance of equilibrium. How we assign the balance of equilibrium? In assigning of balance of equilibrium or disequilibrium, it may be equilibrium, it may be disequilibrium. Only autonomous transaction of both current and the capital account are taken into account. So basically, assigning the balance or imbalance of a balance of payment, that time we have to only consider autonomous transaction of both current as well as in capital account have to take into account. In this process, assigning the BOP disequilibrium, first the current account balance of autonomous transaction is estimated. So what we have to do first, we have to estimate the current account balance. Then the capital account balance is work out the best of the short term and a long term transition. Because in capital account, there will be short term and long term capital transactions out there. We have to take into account short term as well as a long term capital account, capital inflow and outflow. Finally, the current account balance, it may be surplus, it may be deficit, and the capital account balance are sum up and assess the BOP status of the country. So we have to combine both account balance, capital as well as the current account balance, and that will be showing the BOP status of a particular country. If the sum of the current and the capital account balance is a negative, if the sum of, I repeat again, if the sum of the current as well as capital account balance is a negative, it's showing the country's BOP have the disequilibrium in a deficit nature. So they have the deficit in their balance of payment. So similarly, if a sum of the autonomous transaction of the current as well as the capital account is a balance in a positive amount or positive, there will be positive value. It's showing that BOP have a disequilibrium in a surplus nature. So there will be surplus or there will be some deficit. Okay, when we have the basically negative balance of current and capital account balance, that time we have the deficit nature. If there is positive capital and current account, that time we can get the some surplus nature of a balance of payment. So now we have to discuss causes of a disequilibrium. What are the causes behind the disequilibrium? So basically, the current account deficit arise mainly because of the trade deficit. So trade deficit, it means the export existing the import existing the export of the goods and services. So basically the current account deficit will be occur because of the trade deficit, and the trade deficit, it means the most of time the import is quite greater than the export of the goods and commodity. Why it will be happen? Because first we have the high rate of economic growth lending to rise the demand for the industrial product. To achieving the high growth rate of the economy, it will be created or rising the demand of the industrial product. It may be machines, it may be raw materials, it may be some technology. So that will be demand will be arise, and the demand arise means the import will be rise in terms of the industrial product. Next, we have the high rate of inflation compared to the foreign country. Sometimes if you have the high level of inflation compared to the foreign country, so that time it will be quite difficult to compute the in a global level to other country in terms of the pricing of the product, and they are able to sell their commodity at quite lower price than our product. Because if we have the inflation, so inflation, it means if the inflation is there, automatically the factor price also increasing and our cost of production also increasing. So it has some adverse impact on the price. So we are not compute the in global market price of the other countries, and that will also have the cost to more they can sell their product in a lower price to compare to our commodity price. So automatically their import will be rise and our export will be zero. In an increase in third, we have an increase in overall demand for foreign goods and services. Basically, so there will be some tendency in a society to using the foreign export commodity is quite prestigious. Some society they are thinking, though some people are thinking to using the export goods or some others outsider goods that is a quite prestigious in a society. So basically, the demand for the foreign goods or the services, it may be increased because of the quality. They have quite better quality because of they are able to sell their commodity in a lower price, or because of that is there will be tendency to using the foreign commodity or outsider commodity. So next we have the higher income velocity of the demand for the foreign goods. So higher income, I think income velocity, it means if the income changes by the 10%, the, our domestic demand of the foreign goods will be increased more than the 10%, or we have the quite higher income elasticity of the foreign goods or commodity. Next, we have the low price elasticity of the demand for import goods. So there is a low price elasticity of the demand for import goods because we are basically we are producing the agro commodity or some primary commodities, and in the market there are various number of substitutions are available, and if we are changing the price, so that will be not in that will be have the direct impact on our demand in the global market, because the customer can, or the buyers, those are working in the global market, they can shift their demand from our country to other country. Right, so basically they have the low price elasticity of the demand for the foreign goods. Next, we have the people preference of the foreign goods. So most of the time we see basically in a developing country like India or some other country, so they are quite giving more important to give more preference to using the foreign commodities, or to use the foreign commodity is quite prestigious to them. So that also, and that's why the export will be the quite higher than the import, and the current account are sometime or some not sometime, the most of the time in our country, not only our country but those are the developing country, they have the imbalance, or they have the deficit in their current account of current account. Next, we have the kinds of disequilibrium. What are the kinds of the disequilibrium? So basically, we have the two kinds of the disequilibrium. First, we have the fundamental disequilibrium, and another we have the circular disequilibrium. So about the fundamental disequilibrium, basically, it occurs when the BOP disequilibrium is caused by the high rate of the present inflation. So such a disequilibrium will be arise because of the high rate of the inflation in the domestic market. So high rate of the inflation already we discussed about, it will be a cause up to increasing the cost of the production. And automatically it will be cause to the reducing the demand of a domestic market of a domestic commodity. And similarly, those are the foreign community, they can sell their product in quite lower price in our country. So basically, fundamental disequilibrium will be there. Next, we have the circular disequilibrium. So this it will be occur when the BOP disequilibrium arise because of the global business cycle. So global business cycles are there, and because of that, that such a disequilibrium will be arise because of the global business cycle. Business cycle refer the intermittent tendency for growth and dispersion in an economy. So growth and dispersion, growth means that they are able to produce more goods in commodity, or their employment will be rising, and some oppositely we have a dispersion, depression. So depression where the prices are decreasing and the employment will reduce, the people are not ready to buy the commodity. So in such a way that the time the imbalance will be created in a balance of payment. A cycler BOP disequilibrium, it is that generally self-creating. So such a disequilibrium is known as a self-creating disequilibrium in a balance of payment. Now, the kinds of disequilibrium are other. Also, we have some kinds of disequilibrium. First, we have the structural disequilibrium and temporal disequilibrium. So structural disequilibrium mean when the BOP disequilibrium arise due to the structural change in a domestic or foreign market. So that the balance of disequilibrium will be arise, or imbalance. The balance of payment can be imbalance because of the structural change in a domestic as well as in a foreign market, and such a disequilibrium is known as the structural disequilibrium. And temporary disequilibrium basically mean many countries are often comfort with the BOP disequilibrium for the short period, or they are facing only short period disequilibrium. This is known as a temporary disequilibrium of a BOP. After some time, they have some equilibrium in their BOP. So that is, these are the kinds of the disequilibrium, or we can say that these are the types of the disequilibrium. So we try to discuss some causes. So why such a disequilibrium are they created? First, we have the seasonal crop failures. That is a temporary disequilibrium. Seasonal crop failures owing the heavy rainfall or drought, or especially the countries are producing the mainly primary product. So that seasonal crop production will be declined, and maybe because of the heavy rainfall, because of the drought situation, or because of the some other natural calamities, and that will be have the adverse impact on the production, and that cause will be a cause of the disequilibrium of a balance of payment. But this cause is a quite temporary cause. Okay, after certain period finish, the country can be start their production. So next we have the sudden economic depression in causes of the sharp decline in the GDP of a country, of forcing the rapid rise on import and the sharp decline in export due to the sudden decline in the domestic product. So basically, sudden decline in domestic product also are cause of the temporary disequilibrium. So maybe there are some economical issues, are economical or some other issues are there, and that's why the GDP of a particular country will decline quite faster, and it has some impact on their import and export. Uh, Ambitions of development programs requiring the heavy import. So basically, ambition of the developing program to require quite heavy import of the industrial inputs, technology, and known as a machineries and others also. But after some period, they are importing such a industrial product. But this product will be used for the increasing the productivity of a domestic industrial sectors, and that will be after some period they are able to produce quite good productions, and they are able to send this production in our outside also. Change in a customer choice preferences, owning the better quality of the foreign goods, and the demonstration effect or advanced countries on the consumption patterns of the developing economies, leading the import and trade deficit. So that also one cause. Also, it will be created some trade deficit because of the customer choice or preference will be changed, or sometimes the quality of the foreign goods and commodities, or demonetization effect of the advanced countries, or there's some other effect that will be. We have some disequilibrium in the balance of payment. So basically, the balance of payment have some disequilibrium, and this disequilibrium we can have some type like a fundamental disequilibrium, cyclical disequilibrium. Similarly, we have the structural as well as a temporary disequilibrium are there. Afterwards, we have the implication of the balance of payment disequilibrium. So deficit of balance of disequilibrium, or one side we have the deficit of balance of disequilibrium, and another we have this another side, that is surplus balance of payment disequilibrium. So basically, in a rise in internal indebtedness, what are the causes behind the, if we have the deficit in a deficit disequilibrium in a balance of payment? So that first cause is the rise in international indebtedness. So rise in international indebtedness means a country have to, their debt, external debt will be continuously rise, because each and every year if they are getting deficit in their balance of payment, and if they are facing this such a problem from long period, so to covering the deficit they have to take a loan from the external sources. It may be some country, it may be some international organization, and it will be cause of the rising indebtedness of the country. Next, we have the adverse impact on the economic growth. So it will have the adverse impact on economic growth, because we have to spend too much amount to fulfill the deficit, and similarly to fulfill the loan payment, repayment, and the interest on the loan, external loan we are taking. So that have the adverse impact on the growth of the domestic country. Next, we have the rise unemployment. Basically, it will be rise unemployment because of capital creation will be decline, and if the capital creation will decline, we don't have too much sufficient amount, adequate amount for the investment, and it have the adverse impact on the creation of the job. So job creation will be decreases, and it have the it is the cause of the increasing the unemployment, and financial crisis will be there. So there are financial crisis we'll be facing if we have the continuously such a problem, long time the such problem that is BOP deposit, and each and every time we have to depend on other country for the getting money. So that time our country or our people can face a financial crisis. Such crisis is known as, we have that crisis. We have already faced such a crisis in 1991. That crisis also known as the BOP crisis. That time we don't have the sufficient amount to pay a input, additional input. Similarly, such a crisis can face by the Sri Lanka recently, or sometime we can have some other state, a near state like Pakistan or other state also facing the deficit crisis, a financial crisis, because of they are getting continuously deficit in their balance of payment. That is the one side where if the country have the deficit in a balance of payment, so they can that will be that will be have some impact on the economy. In other side, if a country have the surplus means they have the quite surplus in international trade, and what it will be have the impact. So first we have that is the rise in international economic power and strength of the economy. So if country are getting continuously surplus, quite bigger amount in surplus, so it will be created quite higher economic power in international level and the strength of particular country. So we have a good example like China. China is created now. It will be have the quite bigger economic power and strength in the international level because of their balance of payment, because of their international trade, and also they have some another adverse effect, that is the inflation will be created because those countries are getting the surplus. It means the factor of production are in their country getting quite higher amount, and if they are getting the income, their income will be rise, and it have the impact on the inflation situation. So basically, deficit as well as surplus have some impact on the economy. Afterwards, we have one India's current account and external debt. Here, we try to correlate it, or we try to correlate it India's trade balance, current account trade balance, and India's debt, what the Indians are getting. So we have some data like 2001, 2010, and where we're showing the trade balance, current account trade balance, basically, uh, and where each and every year from 2001 to 2010 we are continuously getting the deficit in a current account, and that deficit is not only we are getting the deficit, but each and every year deficit continuously rising. Okay, because in 2000 2001 our deficit is a minus 12.5, and afterwards it will be up to 2004-5 it become a 33.7, and after 2005 or 2004 it will be increasing and making quite higher amount, and our import is quite greater than the export. So we try to collaborate this trade balance through the external debt, because if we have the trade balance, it means to fulfill such a trade balance, we need some amount, and that amount will we are getting from the external sources and in the terms of the external debt. So here we have the data showing the external debt. So our total external debt in US billion dollars, and in 2001 we have the 101.3 US billion dollar, that is the external debt. And afterwards the debt only, I think, 2010 2002 it will be declined some amount of the debt, but afterwards the debt amount will be increasing continuously. Okay, so it's showing that if a country have the current account trade balance, it also their debtness will be increasing because they are both the factors are the correlated. Okay, if the country have the deficit, it means that they have to fulfill the such a deficit, and if you want they want to fulfill the deficit, they have to take a loan or they have to take a financial support from the other countries. Okay, and that's why their deficit or their external debt will be increasing continuously. So we can see in this slide, in 2001 our external debt is only 101.3 billion dollars. I think up to 2004 the debt will be increasing, but the increasing rate is not too much. That is 112.7 dollars, so $7 billion, and afterwards the debt will be increasing quite faster and quite larger rate, and 2010 it became a 262.3 billion dollar. So if within a 5 years the external debt will be increased more than double or more than half and one two and a half time. Similarly, when we think about the balance of trade, so deficit also that we can see that will be increased more than 3 or 4 times. So it's showing that if a country getting the deficit, so fulfill such a deficit, they need to get an external debt. So that is our definition today's lectures. So basically today we discuss about the balance of payment equilibrium first. So today now we have to conclude today's lectures. What we do today, basically we try to understand what is meant by balance of payment, the meaning, the content in the balance of payment, or the types of the balance of payment. Basically, that's the deficit balance and the surplus payment, and some account that's the current and capital account. Afterwards, we try to discuss the kinds of the balance of payment, and afterwards we have the BOP equilibrium and disequilibrium. So why the BOP is equal be a become a imbalance, and we try to find out some causes. Thus we try to find out some types of the balance of disequilibrium, and similarly we discuss some India's balance of payment, how it will be how the connected to their balance of uh, trade deficit and their international external debt. So now today we have to cover our balance of payment topic of our balance of payment. So thanks to everyone for attending the today's lectures. So thank you everyone. Thank you.